Ketubot, Shavua Tov, Masechet Ketubot, Kafchet Amud Aleph 28a1. We just said that if a woman comes and she gets divorced, so if right now the Kohen comes and he gets divorced, his divorced wife, Lo Taduri Mo B'Mavui, cannot live in the same Mavui, which means that it's even bigger, meaning even you need a bigger separation when it's a Kohen. Because remember, a Kohen cannot get married to a Grusha, even if to a divorced woman, even if it's his own divorced wife. So he says, Ima Yakfar Katan, if it's going to be a small village, this was a story that it came and they said, Kfar Katan is like a shuna, and therefore the entire village, you can't live in the entire village. Why? Because, right, you can't live in that entire village because it's such a small place, we're going to suspect that there might be monkey business. So ask the Gemara, who do you send off? They just get divorced. Who has to move out of town? The husband or the wife? Says the Gemara, Tashema de Tanya, she has to leave. And he doesn't have to leave. Why? Says the Gemara, but if it's going to be that the chatzer belonged to her, so then he moves. Meaning, if she's the owner of the house, so then he has to move around. But if not, she has to leave. Why? But we're going to see why now. So says the Gemara, listen, we'll see. So we're going to ask the question, what happens if they belong to both of them? They were both owners. So says the Gemara, what's halacha? So Tashema, we already learned. She has to move. But my skin, what are we dealing with? If it's his chatzer, so obviously she has to move out. But obviously if it's hers, right? But if it's hers, we already said, he has to move out. Obviously it means that it belongs to both of them. And if it belongs to both of them, she has to move out. So says the Gemara, Dilma de Agir Megar. Well, maybe they're both renting. So my havila, so what's halacha? Tashema, Hine Hashem etaltelecha taltele gaver. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will move you around like the tiltul of a man. The Amar Rav says, Tiltule de gavra kashin mi de iteta. It's more difficult for a man to move places than for a woman. So therefore, that's why the woman has to leave and not the man. Okay, somebody once asked me, how could this be? And I explained to them that it was very, very simple. You have to remember that in the olden days, women always stayed in the house. So therefore, it doesn't matter where you put her, a house. She likes the house, that's it. A man, he had to go to the Bet Knesset, he had to go to work, he had to go. Now, if you now come and you take the man and you put him in another scenario, now he has to get accustomed to a new job, right? To finding a job, to a new Bet Knesset, to a new this, to a new society. For him, it's much more difficult. For her, it's like you're taking the house with her and you're putting her in another house. As long as she has a four corner, she's happy with what she has. Nowadays, it could be that certain things changed also because now she also goes out. But in the olden days, a woman was in the house. So for her, it was very easy to move from one place to another. What's the big deal? You understand? So that's what. So it says again, right? We now learn in a Braita, if he's going to take a loan, right? Then imagine you have a Kohen, he's taking a loan from his wife, right? From the properties of her father, not from her money, because if not, it belonged to him, but rather from the property of her father. He's not allowed to pay it back directly. He has to pay it back through somebody else. Again, remember, we keep on suspecting that if he's going to come and see her, he might do something again. And again, he's a Kohen, she's a Grusha, even though she was his wife, but that's it. Amar Rav Sheshat says, Rav Sheshat, they come in front of the Din, we don't pay attention to them. Rav Papa Amar Shemut, we give them nidui, we put them in excommunication. Right? Rav Huna bar Yeshua Amar, we also give them lashes. That means why? Because again, we do not want them to be together. You understand? That means we don't want them to be together because we suspect it. You understand? Nachman says, Be'aver Rabati, right? Be'aver Masechet Tzmachot. With their Tana, we learned the Masechet Tzmachot. When are these words? Shenish Gashamin and Nisuin. Only if they got divorced from the Nisuin. But if they only got divorced from Irusin, then he's allowed to pay her directly, right? Because then, which means like this: all this that we're talking about, that they're not allowed to have a connection, they're not allowed to go to Betim together, he's not allowed to pay her back. All these things is if they got divorced from marriage, because when they get divorced from marriage, they had a very strong bond. So all they have to say is one word, and they already know what they're doing. They're in bed. You understand? But what happens if they were divorced from Irusin, from an engagement? There, he says no problem. Why? Because Enli Bo Gaspa. There was one son, Arus and Arusato, that came in front of Rabba. Yativ Ravada Bar Matana come in. Ravada Bar Matana was in front of him. Uki Rabba Shlucha, and he put a sheikh between them. Amaleh Ravada Matana, Amar Nachman, why would you talk about? I thought we didn't need it. Amaleh, he says, Kachazin and the Kagais with that. He said, no. I saw them both, and I saw that they're very close to each other. Meaning sometimes you could have even a fiancé, like a groom, and even without getting married, they were already very, very close. So I went and I put somebody in between them because I didn't want that they should be together. Some people say, look, we didn't actually put them together, shliach between them. Why don't you put somebody? You don't need it. He says, he says, no, they were so close to each other, they do need to put somebody in between. Says the Mishnah, Mishnah Kavchet Amud Aleph 28a. Ve'elu ne'emanim le'a'id begodlan. These are the people, the witnesses that you're allowed to testify when they get older. Al ma shera'u bekotnam, when they saw, when they were children. Meaning, you have a person that he saw something when he was a child, and all of a sudden he gets older, and now you could actually listen to the testimony. Ne'eman adam lomar. A person is believed to say, Zeh ktav yado shel Abba. This is the writings of my father. What does that mean? This is the handwritings of my father. Or this is the handwriting of my rabbi. This is the handwriting of my brother. Right, Parua. I remember that this girl came out, and she came out with the head revealed and everything. And that a certain person was coming out of the school in order to do tevilah, to eat truma. Or he used to divide with us in the Metagoren. That means, again, all these things he's believed to say, even though he was a child when he saw it. And now he's testifying when he's older. So this place is a place of Tum'ah, that we're not sure if there's Tum'ah or not. Or or this is where we used to come until Shabbat, the tomb of Shabbat. But a person not believed to say that somebody was able to go and travel through somebody's field. Or ma'amad misped, or somebody they had a ma'amad misped in this place. Why? Because basically this type of a testimony, you're taking out money from somebody else. So if it's a testimony to take money from somebody else, you used to travel through this guy's field and you used to make a shortcut. That no. Because then I'm taking out money from the other guy. That I'm not believing. But if I'm just going to say that this guy was a Kohen, because I remember him coming and dividing with us in the granary, or I remember this guy coming and going to the place and taking out, and he used to take him out of school in order to do tevilah, to eat truma, or all these other things, that you are going to be believed. Because you're not taking out money from anybody. Says the Gemara, this heter, when he's testifying, is that he's going to have another person that's a gadol also at the same time. Meaning, it's not only that right now, for sure, he's a gadol. Right now, for sure, he's already above bar mitzvah. But it has to be that he was with someone that was also a gadol. Meaning that as long as there was somebody else with him that was also a gadol, he's going to be believed. Says the Gemara, and we need the Mishnah, all these cases, to do with the ktav yad of your father, the ktav yad, the meaning handwriting of your father, of your rabbi, and your brother. Why do we need all three cases? Why? Just tell me, you're believed to say this is your handwriting of your father, right? Or your brother, your father, your rabbi. Why? He says, why? If it's only me, your father, but you're always by your father. But maybe you're a rabbi, maybe not. Right? If it was only going to be your rabbi, but you're so afraid of your rabbi, so you remember his writing. Because you're so afraid of your rabbi, here you're saying what the Gemara is saying. You're more afraid of your rabbi than your father. That means you're more found by your father. You're more common by your father. You're more afraid of your rabbi. So because of that, you remember his signature because he's so aval aviv lo, but maybe not your father. Yes, if you only said about the father and the rabbi, aviv be your father because you're always by him, and the rabbi because you're afraid of him. Aval achiv, but your brother, you're not afraid of him and you're not always by him. I would say no. Since the entire concept of verifying documents is the Rabbanan, so the rabbis, which they are the Rabbanan, they believe you in the Rabbanan. Next, a person comes and when he was a child, he could say, I remember that this girl came out and she was with a veil and she had her hair, which means that she was a betula, she was a virgin, she never got married beforehand. My tama, what's the reasoning? Since the majority of women, they get married when they're betulot, right, when they're virgins, so therefore it's just like revealing something which we already know. Okay, next. That somebody was able to go outside from the school in order to do tevilah, to eat truma. So says the Gemara, maybe he's a slave. If he's a slave, he also eats truma. So maybe he's a slave. Who told you he's a Kohen? So says the Gemara, there's a proof to there's a proof that you're not allowed to teach your son, your slave Torah. Because here you were taking him out of the Bet Sefer, you were taking him out of the school where they're learning Torah. So for this, obviously goes according to that opinion that you're not allowed to teach him Torah. If he's learning Torah in the Bet Sefer, obviously he's a Jew and he's not a slave. Okay? Says the Gemara, "Velo, why you're not allowed to teach your servant Torah?" Latanya, we learned in a Braita. If right now you come and you have, whether it's going to be your rabbi, right, or you borrowed money from him, or his rabbi came and he made him an apotropos, 28b, right? He made him an apotropos. Or sheniat tefillin b'fnei rabo, you put on tefillin, or shekara shlosha psukim v'beit knesset, or you read 3 psukim in beit knesset. He doesn't go out, which means these things are not a proof that he's Jewish. So therefore, how does this argues on Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says you're not allowed to teach him Torah. What are you talking about? Here, he's borrowing, right? If he comes and he borrowed money from his own servant, or he made him into his master, made him into a potropos, into the one that's like, the appointment, the one that's like the one that's in charge of all the different dealings, or he put on tefillin in front of his rabbi, or he read 3 psukim in the Beit Knesset. He doesn't go out. So says no, hatam di ikre eved midato ki kamrina de kanai be minhag banim. Says there we're talking about that he's called an eved in the Torah, and there's no isur, so there's no hochacha that he freed him. Here, when we talk about you're not allowed to teach him Torah, is when he's still like as if say that he's going to be like the other children. So if you're going to come and you're going to put him into the Talmud Torah like all the other children, it's a problem, because then what? Is he a student? Is he a slave? Or is he his child? We don't know anymore. Okay? Next, the Mishnah said, Litpol lechol truma. He used to do tevilah and he used to eat truma. The truma de Rabbanan. Obviously, we're talking about truma de Rabbanan, because if it's truma doraita, we never accept the testimony of a child. So it's only truma de Rabbanan that the rabbis believed him in the Rabbanan. Sheyach cholek imanu lagoren, or that these divide, right? Alagoren. What's alagoren on the granaries? So he comes and he says, right? What does this mean? He comes and he says, yeah, v'dilma eved kohen. Maybe he's an eved kohen. So Tnan Kimanda Amar en cholkin truma le'eved lemken rabo imo. So we learned that we're not going to divide the truma to a slave unless his rabbi is with him. The Tanya was going to the Braita. En cholkin truma le'eved lemken rabo imo. You never give to the slave unless the master's there. It means you could give. Remember, the slave is allowed to eat what you eat. So if you eat truma, the slave is allowed to eat truma, but only if the master's with you can you eat. Okay, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef says, Yachol hu yomash yomar. He could say, in Kohen tenuli b'shilatzi. If he's a Kohen, give it for me. In Eved Kohen, and if I'm an Eved Kohen, give it for my master. In Komosh Rabbi Yehuda, ma'alin truma le'yuchasin. So in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, they used to bring up from truma to yuchasin. If you used to eat truma, they used to say you're able to get married to a Kohen, you're like a genealogy. In Komosh Rabbi Yossi, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't ma'alin truma yuchasin. So Tana, we learned on the right. I'm going to be Rabbi Yosef says Rabbi Yosef, "Mi'amai lo hayati." I never testified anything in the bedin. Pam achat hayati. Once I testified, ve'elu eved lekiuna al pi, and they brought up a kohen to kiuna because of me. That's why he never wanted to testify. Why? Because basically he went and he said what? He used to eat truma. So they went and they said, okay, so he's a kohen, but he wasn't a kohen. He was an eved kohen. So they went and they did the mistake. Says the Gemara, do you really think that they brought him up? If an animal of a tzaddik, are you listening? An animal of a tzaddik, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not bring a takala through them. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not bring a stumbling block even to the animal of a tzaddik. To the tzaddik kol sheken, you're going to have that the tzaddik is going to fall because he went and he made a mistake and he brought up a slave to become a kohen. Ella, you're right. Bikshula, a lot of it. They wanted to bring him up to kiuna, but they didn't at the end. So Chaza be'atre de Rabbi Yosef. The Oziel said, why? Because he saw it in the city of Rabbi Yosef, and then he went and testified in the city of Rabbi Yehuda. Remember, in the city of Rabbi Yehuda, they used to bring up from Truma to Yuchasin. The city of Rabbi Yosef said no. So he saw it in the city of Rabbi Yosef that they were giving by themselves Truma, and then he went to the city of Rabbi Yehuda, and then he was testifying, and it was a mistake, because in the other place, they wouldn't do so. Next. 2 dots. We're almost done. This place is a beta pras. What is a beta pras? Remember, beta pras means that there was a kever, there's a tombstone, that it was actually buried there, that it was there, and they didn't know where it was. I mean, they got lost in the place. It's called a beta pras. So it says, my time, what's reasoning, beta pras is the Rabbanan. Once the Rabbanan, he was believed that when he was a child, he could say, here was a beta pras. The Amar of Yudah Meshua says, you could blow, right? You could walk and blow to make sure there's no bones around. And you could go through a beta pras. What happens if it was plowed? So then it's going to be permitted. It's going to be pure. My time on what's reason? Because it's impossible that it wasn't trampled upon. Okay, so therefore, afterwards, what happens is since they went, right, they probably made it, so therefore there's no bones anymore, and therefore it's going to be kosher. right? Then they said also they're believed to say Ad Kan Tchum Shabbat. That means they're allowed to say that until here you're allowed to walk on Shabbat. So he says Kasavar Tchum the Rabbanan. So obviously he holds that Tchum is the Rabbanan, not the Raita. But remember, all these things, since he was a child when he saw it, and then he's only testifying when he's a Gadol, he was only believed by the rabbis. He's not believed on the Raitas. He's only believed by the rabbis. So it says the Gemara, but he's not allowed to, he's not believed to say that obviously he cannot testify on the negative of somebody else. That means I cannot testify that you were walking through his field. And therefore you have a chazakah that you're always allowed to walk through his field. Why? Because that means I'm taking away money from him. So when I was a child, I cannot be believed to say that you were doing that. Okay, so he says over here, my time what's reasoning. We do not take out money. We learned in the right. This is what my father said. This family is Tmeah or Torah. You really think that somebody's believed to say that this is a pure family or an impure family? And this mishpacha is kasher. That means there's no pgam or pasul, or there is a pgam. That means we're not talking about tahor or tameh. We're talking about kasher and pasul. So it says v'shachalnu b'tzitza. That means they did the shalba ploni ploni. We used to give these presents to the Kohanim. So for what does that mean? That means basically that they were doing during the time of the Khatuna. So that was obviously going to be a proof, right? What is this chatzatza? We're going to see now. So it says the Gemara, only through themselves and not through anybody else. If there was an Oved Kochavim and then he converted, they're not going to be believed. Okay, so that means it's only going to be a pure Jew that's going to be believed, not a person that was a goy and he converted, or a slave and then he was free. You're not believed to say that they are believed. So if Yochanan and Broka comes and he says, "Hi, what's he going on?" If you're going to tell me that he's going on the Seifa, we already just said, you're taking out money. But rather we're going on the Reisha. If he was a goy and then he converted, or he was a slave and he was free, he's not going to be believed. Yochanan and Broka says he is going to be believed. What is a machloket? Tanakama holds that since he was a goy, he wasn't medayek. He wasn't putting his attention to it. Rabbi Yochanan Broka says no, but since he wanted to convert, he was paying attention to it. Mike tzatza, what does it mean here that he was eating the tzatza at the wedding of Bat Ploni Leploni? So he says, if you have somebody that got married to somebody that's not proper to him, the family would come, they would bring a barrel of fruits, they would break it in the middle of the rechava, and they would say, right? Our brothers, Betty said, listen, Achinu, our brother, is getting married to somebody that's not fitting for him. And we're afraid maybe they're going to get married to each other. So take for yourselves a dugma, a thing, that will never. So the child is believed. You understand what that means? That means you're talking about here that one brother is getting married to somebody that he's not supposed to. The entire family would come, bring a barrel. Exactly. They would bring a barrel in the middle of the street and say to everybody, boom, chop the barrel in half. Our brother is getting married to somebody. We don't want our children to get mixed up with him. What would that do? Nobody would do that again. Right? So that's what they were doing. So a child was believed to say that. 100%, but that's what they would do. They would do that. By the way, you should know they actually did that happened in Gibraltar. There was a woman, right? There was a girl. She wanted to get married. No, there was another case. She wanted to get married to a goy. Listen carefully. She wanted to get married to a goy. The brother, he was very smart. He was a rabbi. He had a meeting. All the brothers and her. He sat her down. She was the only girl in the family. All the rest were boys. He sat her down. He says, you have to make the decision. You want to get married? The Chavod get married. Right now, we do Kriya. We do Kriya as if you're dead. You're dead. That's it. Right now. You make the decision. It's either yes or no. She didn't do it. She was Chazara b'tshuva. She got married. She's living in Eretz Yisrael. She has children. They're religious, right? I think he even learns, that thing, like not a full-time Avrech, but I'm saying he saved it. He went and he said, "You do it right now, no problem. You make the decision. The decision is in your hand. But if it's yes, kriya. Tear the condition. We finish the second chapter, and we start Bezrat Hashem tomorrow with the third chapter.